This podcast is intended for mature audiences and could be triggering to some. Please use discretion when listening. Hey everyone, welcome to Hearts with Jewels, a podcast where survivors can share their story. Back with another episode, and today I'd like to introduce you to our guest today. Her name is Manjit Ruprai. Manjit is a survivor of narcissistic abuse. We've also been social media friends for a while now. I really want to thank you today, Manjit, for taking the time to meet with me. And just for the listeners, could you tell us more about yourself?
Thank you so much for having me. So, I'm a narcissistic abuse recovery therapist, and I got into this about 5 years ago. And it's after I discovered that I'd been a victim of narcissistic abuse for the vast majority of my life. And, kind of having therapy, working on myself, and researching and reading up on the disorder, it really helped me in my recovery, and now it's wonderful just to help so many people from all around the world.
Yeah, that must feel amazing.
Yes, I absolutely love what I do.
And I love what you do too. I see your content. It's amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. Yours is great too,
Thank you.
Jules.
Right. So let's jump right into it. So I wanted to ask you, how long was your relationship and when did you start noticing you were in an abusive relationship?
So my relationship was on and off about 1 year. So I was introduced to him by family, and I was blown away straight away. It was so intense, and the intensity of it just kind of took me by surprise. So after that, we started meeting as often as we could. He was about 100 miles away from me, and he actually just seemed like the perfect man. And he told me he wanted the same serious things and that he'd been searching for someone like me his entire life. It just sounded like the perfect dream and not something that I'd heard before. So over the years, I'd been on so many dates and had so many failed relationships, and someone telling me that they wanted a serious relationship felt so good to me.
Right.
He sold the perfect dream and presented himself as a really nice guy with a good job as an investment banker. And it was really everything I wanted to hear. He said all the right things. I wanted to get married, having children, and just a future together. And I fell for it so hard. I was 30 at the time, and really in my Indian culture, you face a lot of judgment if you're not married by a certain age. And I was beginning to feel a lot of pressure from my mother. She constantly reminded me to get married. I felt that I'd made so many wrong decisions. Me not being married by 30 in my culture felt a lot of shame and guilt. It's just the way it is in the culture, and it can be very, very toxic. So the relationship, it moved along very quickly. The love bombing and the intensity of it all literally swept me off my feet. And within a few weeks, he wanted to get married. Can you believe that, Jules? He wanted to
Wow.
get married.
That's so soon.
So I know. And it was all moving along so fast. And I went along with it. So for me, a big thing was I'd please my mum and I wouldn't have the judgment of other people. Kind of being Indian can be very, very difficult and quite a judgmental culture. And, as the relationship grew, he gave me so much attention and communicated with me consistently. And it's something that I'd not had before. If I didn't answer my phone, I'd find about 20 missed calls from him. I really took that as someone who was caring and kind and really wanted to be with me, someone that was into me. I took it as love, but I think really if I think about it, it was quite possessive. And somebody ringing you that many times is quite kind of possessive over you. So I started to notice the first red flag when he came to my hometown for his birthday. That was within a few weeks of meeting. And I made it very special for him. I bought him a mobile phone as a gift, as that is what he wanted. And I booked him, a place that he could stay at a hotel. And we spent the weekend together and I felt we had a wonderful time. That's what I thought in my head anyway. And it was only after he returned home that I noticed the change. He was quiet, he was reserved, and he didn't really engage in a lot of conversation. He accused me of not giving him any attention over that weekend and being uncaring and not making any effort at all. So I was very devastated to hear that, as I'd spent so much money on him and making the weekend special. So I apologized for making him feel this way. And I stupidly blamed myself and dwelled on how I could have made his birthday even better and more special. But, he hung up on me, but
Wow.
rang me hours later and forgave me for whatever he thought I'd done wrong. And, he made it clear he'd never visit me again in my hometown, which was a big red flag for me that, it should be a two-way thing, two people visiting together.
Right.
And I just stupidly accepted that and went along with everything. After that, things were okay for a few weeks until he met my family. So we decided to go on a day out. I did think it was a little bit too much to begin with, but he had suggested it and I went along with it. And, my family, they were very welcoming. And as the day progressed, he became very withdrawn and started to give me strange looks. He then started to make passive aggressive remarks at me and began to devalue me. He said I was a bit overweight, although I'd been exercising a lot. And I'd really lost quite a lot of weight over the course of the months. And he pointed at my stomach area and told me it was big and it was sticking out. And now that I think about it, I think he was actually projecting onto me. There was many times he said to me that he wanted to lose weight, he was insecure, he wanted to look good. But I think that was him being insecure, so he needed to make a passive aggressive remark at me.
Right.
But I ignored him as the kind of day went on because I just thought, okay, things are going to escalate if I challenge him and call him out. And I really didn't want my family to think bad of him and that he was a total jerk. He continued to give me strange looks over that evening and, over the course of the day. And even over dinner, he sat there unengaging, and like I didn't exist. It was like so it's completely insignificant. He tried to talk to my family, but I might as well have not been there. On the way home, he began to yell at me and tell me that I've not paid him any attention and that I've not made him feel welcome. That came up again, like on his birthday weekend. He started to raise his voice and people watching on my family, but he was really not that bothered. So he shouted at me all the way home, and it was a good hour-long journey home. So he accused me of all kinds of things that I'd done, and I think he was projecting everything onto me. So the next morning, we parted our ways. He went home and I went home, and kind of the next morning, he'd rang me 20 times and he apologized, but also guilt tripped me and blamed me for the argument. And, he turned up to where I was staying with a big bunch of flowers, and it was like nothing had happened.
Mm-hmm.
Over the weeks after that, he began to pile on the pressure of getting married, wanted to be married within like about 3 or 4 months. I was simply not ready. We were having far too many problems, but my lack of acceptance to get married seemed to be causing more problems, but it's kind of a circle going round and round. And over the months, things were very up and down. We spoke on and off, but he became distant and very, very snappy every time I spoke to him. Most of the time, he would hang up on me. One day, he hung up, and hours later, he called me back and apologized. And he said that he's taking some diet pills and they were making him behave like this, which was rather strange. I don't think diet pills would do that to you.
No, I don't think
So
they can.
that was it was a great big excuse.
Right.
And then he ghosted me. And really, the consistent communication that we had initially went downhill. So he stopped calling me, he ghosted me. It wasn't intense anymore. And I felt that my confidence was going completely downhill, was getting insecure and paranoid. And I really suffered in silence because I didn't want to, kind of tell my family
Right.
that he was behaving in this way. I didn't want to disappoint my mum.
Right.
And it was a very, very difficult time. Most of the time, he would stand me up, would arrange to meet, but he'd stand me up. And I'd go and travel to see him. And over the weekend, he wouldn't even take my calls and he wouldn't meet me. Other times, he communicated with me unbearably with such intensity. And then he'd make me feel insignificant, devalued me a lot, and would disappear for weeks on end. And then he'd accuse me and my family of so many things that we're looking down on him, we're, kind of stringing him along, and that we're just horrible people. And when we did meet, it was good. Every now and again, he would meet me, but it was all on his terms. So I was found that, if I look back now with all the kind of knowledge that I have, I was being love bombed, I was
Right.
being devalued, and then he was discarding me. I really didn't know where I stood with him.
Yeah.
So over the months of that relationship, and it was about a year long relationship of a big up and down. I actually discovered that he was either out partying with his friends or he was cheating on me. He'd also lied about his job. He told me he worked as an investment banker, but he really worked in a supermarket. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's the fact that he actually lied to me
Right.
and made out that he's something that he's not.
Mhm.
And then one day he called me and said it is over and that he's met somebody else. And as you can imagine, I was absolutely devastated. But now I look back, I'm so relieved. I think it would have been a marriage doomed for hell.
Right. Right.
And I'll be honest with you, if he had not left me, I don't think I'd have left him because I was very trauma bonded. And I actually thought that marriage would fix everything.
Right.
And with that, I think I was too ashamed to tell my mother and let her down. And I was quite different back then. I didn't know what I was dealing with and that he was actually a narcissist. I think he's probably an overt narcissist. He was not actually that bothered about who was around, how he was. It wasn't, that the door had to close behind. He was just when he went on his narcissistic rage, he would actually go on one. And, after that, I had to work a lot on myself, but I did unfortunately go on to be a spiritual narcissist. But Jules, that could be a podcast for another time, I think.
Yeah, for sure. No, definitely. I do plan on making a series too.
We might have to.
So yeah, that must have been so like confusing though, right?
It was so confusing. And I think really back then I was such a different person. I didn't know what I was dealing with and it was just really, really confusing. It just felt like a wonderful relationship. And I think at the beginning I was so happy.
Right.
And when things went downhill, I think I was looking back for that same high he gave me the first time I'd met him.
Yeah,
So it was very, very confusing. And narcissistic abuse is a very confusing thing.
it is. It definitely
Very
is.
confusing, absolutely.
Yeah. And I can relate to the cultural part of yours because our culture is the
Yes,
same thing. So if we were to, introduce a man in the home, and then I wouldn't feel comfortable saying things are not working out either because it would be more embarrassing too.
absolutely. And I think in some cultures it's like that,
Yeah.
isn't it? And
Yeah, it's like
it
an
can be
embarrassment to
quite
the family
difficult.
name.
Absolutely, yeah, a huge embarrassment to the family because I think with this, um, I was serious about him, which is why, I think that I'd introduced him to my family, but also I did trust the other people as well that they were introducing me to a reasonable, a nice guy, basically.
Right.
So it's a very, very, very complicated, the whole thing. But yeah, culturally, that can be quite hard and very, very challenging.
It is, yeah, definitely.
And the amount of pressure that you can feel, it's a lot of guilt in yourself and a huge amount of shame and
Yep,
causing shame to the family as well.
exactly. Yeah. So what made you ignore the red flags?
Okay, so I think I ignored the red flags because I'll be honest with you, I didn't actually think much of them. So I've grown up with a narcissistic parent. So to be honest, conflict was something I was probably quite used to. I just thought the relationship was just like that. It was a small amount of problems, but that they will sort themselves out onto me. So that was a big factor for me. And I think following on for that, he projected onto me. So I ended up taking a lot of the blame. So I am a scapegoat child. So I was used to being blamed for a lot of things anyway compared to my siblings. So it was really nothing new to me. And as the relationship moved so fast with such intensity of future faking, the red flags didn't seem so obvious. I think I was so, bonded at that point that
Right.
I didn't actually think of the red flags. I ignored them and, kind of put them down to maybe my own paranoia and just something that I'm imagining. And I think all I could think of was our future. So, I just wanted a future with him and to be happy. And, a lot of victims, they do that. That there's common that the thinking of the blossoming future. But when the behavior changed, I became, kind of trapped and trauma bonded. I got trapped in the cycle of love and abuse. The loving and caring side was so good, but then the gaslighting, projection, ghosting, and belittling were just as bad. And to be honest, I think with this man, because I was probably didn't see him as much, he had this huge amount of anger and narcissistic rage. I think that if I had got married to him, I think I'd probably gone through domestic violence, to be honest.
Yeah.
That's how bad he actually was. So I realized now I had a lot of issues in myself, which stemmed from my own childhood. And I think if he had a lot of issues which were from his own childhood, his parents had divorced, and I think his mum was narcissistic as well because she enabled a lot of his abusive behavior.
Right.
So I ignored the red flags because I just wanted to get married. I think that was a big thing for me. The pressure you go through was profound, and being Indian culture, that was this big, huge amount of pressure for
Mhm.
me to get married. And it's quite frowned upon if you're not married by a certain age. And me kind of being, you know, getting into my 30s was seen as okay, I'm just going to be sitting on the shelf if I'm not married. So often, if you're not married, people do see you as somebody with two heads. But, that's something that I still face. I'm now kind of older now, but I'm still not married. But
Mhm.
there's a huge amount of judgment, and I think at that time I just wanted to please my mum
Right.
and to tick that box. But I really know that that was wrong, and I should never have taken so much pressure and put that on myself. it is very sad, but this still continues in the Indian culture that there are many like me that have ignored the red flags and have either made the wrong decision or are stuck in, kind of toxic narcissistic relationships.
Right.
I made a lot of wrong choices because of the pressure, and he was not the first one, and neither was he the last one. But of course, I didn't know about narcissism then. I really didn't know such toxic personalities exist.
Right. Yeah, and that must have been very, very difficult for you. And I really
Yeah.
understand you with the cultural part, because even if you were to get married, it's like you feel like you're not allowed to have a divorce because it again it ruins your family name.
Oh, absolutely. And I've
Yeah.
worked with many clients like that also that have been stuck for, long, long periods of time because of the culture. It
Right.
is frowned upon to get a divorce,
Yeah. Yeah. I
but
get it.
it's not a winning situation, is it? But I think for me now, I'm kind of older and still not married, but I've kind of changed a lot in how I look at things. That is a problem for other people, but not
Right.
for me.
Right.
And if they see you as somebody with two heads or you're not married, then that's really on them. And I think really society does put a lot of pressure on you,
Right.
Jules. You should be married and you need to have children, but it doesn't always have to be like that, does it?
It doesn't. No, I don't agree with it, but
No,
it's
I don't.
difficult.
Very difficult, and maybe over time was, over the generations that things will change. I think that that pressure, the perhaps the generation of today, hopefully they don't have to go through the same.
Yeah, I hope not.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So, what made you finally choose yourself, and how did you set yourself free?
So my journey began in this about 5 years ago. So I've been single for about 7 years now, and I don't actually mind being single. I think people they do get a bit shocked that, oh my God, how have you been single for that long? But I really don't mind either. I don't mind meeting somebody either. I think a lot of people out there have this fear of being alone. So they do jump from relationship to relationship. It's
Right.
very strange. Just this morning, I do like open up a Q&A on my Instagram sometimes, and this lady she actually said that I've only been single for 3 months after breaking up. I want to date again, but I really think you need to give yourself time to heal, to recover, and to work on yourself
Exactly.
rather than, kind of I can't cope with loneliness. I need to be with someone. That's what I was like. Of somebody that jumped from relationship to relationship. And I think I was like that. That people they do feel a need that they have to have someone, but really a toxic relationship is a loneliness like no other. So you might think that okay, I've got to be with somebody for help me with my loneliness, but a toxic relationship is very lonely. And I think for the vast majority of mine, I felt a degree of loneliness that I might as well have been on my own.
Mhm.
So, kind of most of my relationships, I might have had someone, but it was as lonely as hell. They really might as well not have been there. So I've taken a long break. It is probably a longer break than I thought, but I've had to do a lot of work on myself. And really, if I didn't come across narcissism, I think I'd be in the same mindset and repeating the same pattern. So I would never have been able to set myself free.
Right.
So those 5 years, I'm so glad I came across narcissism. The penny finally dropped for me and things began to make sense. It is a very complex disorder and there's so many layers to it. And, for the vast majority of my relationships, I blamed myself for so many years and it's all my fault. But I now realize that it's not me. I think I was actually just dealing with toxic people in my life. I also realized I've got codependency issues, and I'm very open with people about that, not ashamed to admit that. And I've had to work a lot on my boundaries. I think I'll have to do quite a lot of healing work throughout life. And there's so many toxic, narcissistic people that exist, and you'll find that they're in romantic relationships, in work, you've got friends, you've got family, you've got siblings, perhaps anywhere that your neighbor, they are simply everywhere. So really, I think now at this time, I think I'm in a good place. I'm open to a new relationship. I am busy with work, but for the right person, I would make that time. And, I've invested so much of myself in my work as a recovery therapist for narcissism, which I absolutely love. And if I ever had a relationship, I think I will do all the things I didn't do in the previous relationship. And that is to be more vocal, not people please, and just be true to myself. I think in all the other relationships, I think I was probably taking a lot, afraid to speak up
Right.
and maybe not be myself. I kind of realized that there are too many toxic people out there. It isn't easy, but I think with ongoing healing and practicing self-care and boundaries, that's set me as free as I'll ever be.
Right.
So really most will go into a relationship straight away to heal the previous one, but that is more damaging.
Mhm.
This is exactly what I did. You have to discover who you are before you're with someone else. Most people that I work with, and probably I was absolutely one of them, that I didn't know who I was. People, they do base themselves on a relationship.
Right.
Really, relationships are quite scary. The online dating game that's changed completely. There's so many apps out there. They can really be quite toxic in themselves. But there's also healthy relationships as well. So I'm sure you agree, Jules. I
I
think
do.
that with the online dating, that's a toxic thing in itself and a game you're probably not prepared for.
Yeah, definitely. And
If you're feeling quite vulnerable, um, after a breakup, a relationship is absolutely not going to fix you. Got to fix yourself first.
exactly. Yeah, I agree 100%. So, Manjit, how has this experience impacted you? And how's your life now with your healing journey?
So my experience has impacted me massively. I didn't know what I was until I was about 38 years old. I didn't know what narcissism was. And I'm actually now actually 43, Jules. So as I began to research and learn about it, I think it was a big weight lifted off my shoulders. It helped me so much and put the missing pieces of the puzzle together. So for 38 years, I was quite confused. I just thought there were so many things wrong with me. I realized my mother's a narcissist. I do love her a great deal, but have had to put boundaries in place. She's got her own trauma, and I guess she has projected that onto her own children.
Mhm.
And I think again being um my culture, if anybody's listening, will probably say, "Oh my God, you've called your mother a narcissist," but it is sad they do exist everywhere in all cultures,
Right.
in all religions. So I think for me to say that is kind of quite a big thing. So I'm not resentful of my experiences, but I can learn and grow from them. I really wouldn't be doing the work I'm doing if it wasn't for my experience. For years and years, I carried so much anger and hatred, which turned into a horrible pain in the neck. I was carrying trauma there, and I had to get a lot of visits with the chiropractor, but even that wasn't helping because it was the trauma that was hurting me.
Right.
So there are times I will, might still have a bad day. I'm just a human being. We all are, and you will go through the bad days, but on the whole, I'm in, a pretty good place now. I'm not the same as I was. I've had a lot more good days than the bad.
Right.
And I now work with victims of narcissistic abuse, which gives me relief. I can bring my experiences of what I went through with narcissistic abuse into my therapies I offer. My clients are looking for validation, answers, confirmation that they're not going crazy. So, although I can't diagnose their abusers as narcissists, I can listen to their story and validate that they're not imagining the abuse. And there's many times that clients have said that this is the first time that they feel validated. And there's a disorder that not everybody will get unless you have been through it yourself.
Hmm.
Does the narcissist label really matter also with that? Most narcissists don't get diagnosed. My mother isn't. And I think I know many, many people, ex relationships. But you got to look at abuse as abuse. And I love my work. I wake up each morning and I'm so excited to see my clients and help them in their healing journey, which gives me, a purpose as well that I'm doing a good job for them.
Right. You are. You're doing an amazing job.
Thank you.
And yeah, I don't like the whole label either. Like honestly, the label is not important. Like narcissistic is like a personality. You're describing somebody's, personality or how they treat you, right? Like if the shoe
Totally.
fits and you match all the description of how you treat somebody, then
Yeah.
you don't need a label.
Oh,
You're doing
absolutely. I mean,
everything.
I have to agree with you. I mean, there was a lady I worked with, Jules, and she had got her partner to do one of those online tests.
Oh,
But really, it came back that she was so excited. She said that he's not a narcissist, he's okay. And my question to her was, does he still abuse you? And she said, yes. So you're
mhm.
absolutely right. The label doesn't matter because abuse is abuse, but the type of abuse that they give you, you can put it down to the narcissism, but yeah, the label doesn't matter.
100%. I agree. So for the other victims and survivors out there right now, Manjit, who may be listening to your episode, what do you think is important for them to know?
So I would advise anyone that is dealing with a toxic personality to try and get into therapy if they are able to and afford it. Narcissism is such a complex disorder and it leaves you confused. It does not matter if it's a romantic relationship, a parent, siblings, in laws, a co worker, or even your own child.
Mhm.
I was confused for the vast majority of my life, and really, you do not have to feel this way. I didn't grow up with a lot of technology. So, kind of online stuff, research, it was quite limited. Now that there's so much access to information, you can do your research and access all the resources that you need. So I encourage anyone who's dealing with a narcissist to do four things: educate themselves on the disorder and read as much as they can. understand the narcissist's brain and how it functions, because their behavior will become predictable and it wouldn't be a surprise. Learn healthy boundaries and practice self care.
Right. Thank you for that information.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wrote a book a few months back, and you'll find there's loads of books out there, but you'll find my book very helpful, and it's packed with information, and it's an easy read. You get it on Amazon, and it's called Survival Guide for Toxic Narcissistic Relationships. You might still be dealing with your abuser, so validate your experience. It doesn't matter whether it's current or your ex. It's important you get validation. There's a lot of false stuff on social media that also suggests that narcissists can change. And I guess people are looking for hope. So at this time, what I say, there is no cure for narcissism, and they do not change. The cerebral cortex, which carries the seat of empathy, hasn't been developed in the narcissist's brain. This often is down to childhood trauma, a narcissistic parent, bullying, abandonment, neglect, some kind of trauma that the child has gone through. The core basis for narcissism is they do not have empathy, compassion, remorse, and this really will not develop as an adult. The only thing you can do is work on getting away from your abuser, as narcissists do not change. Please do not look for hope of change, but validation that you are not crazy. Look for a way out and breaking your trauma bond, your cognitive dissonance and codependency. You do not owe any loyalty to your abuser. And if you go into therapy, it has to be for you only. And they have to understand narcissistic abuse. Otherwise, the craziness in your brain will continue.
I agree 100%. I spoke
Yes.
with a few clients too who went to therapy, but the therapist wasn't specialized in narcissism. So
Mm.
they weren't getting the validation they needed either, and they didn't understand what they were going through.
I think really you might think with the wrong therapist, you will feel more crazy,
And
Jules. Yeah, absolutely,
they come
because
out
you
feeling
will.
more blamed or like, oh, you need to
Oh,
change.
of course,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
So
And I think I say it's such a complicated disorder. Not every therapist will get it.
yeah, that's true.
And I'm from my experience, I'm just grateful I'm able to bring that to my clients and give them the validation that they need.
And you are a victim yourself, so you understand it more as well. So
Absolutely,
that
yes,
helps.
for sure. Yeah, that helps a huge amount.
Thank you for
Thank you.
all the information that you're giving. It's very, very helpful and everything that
Oh,
you
you're
do.
welcome. Thank you.
So Manjit, what services and resources people like who helped you in your recovery besides
Okay.
the book and
So absolutely, no, that's fine. So I had counseling and I had some hypnotherapy and EMDR. That's eye movement desensitization reprocessing and a lot of grounding work and Reiki healing. And it all helped me immensely. We're so lucky that there's so many therapies out there. There's so many different things that you can try. If one thing doesn't help, there's going to be another. So if another thing, there's be something else. But I say counseling was a really big help for me. And it just helped me to not feel crazy. I also did a lot of reading and educated myself on narcissistic abuse. And there's so many books out there. You can do a Google search. There's some wonderful books out there that you can read, and they will help you as well. I also connected with people on social media, which was very validating. And I think a big part was opening up to my siblings. That offered me a lot of comfort, and it's something that we'd not kind of done before, but it did help. in kind of getting each other's understanding.
Right. And a lot of people
Yeah,
have a hard time opening up too. So, it
yeah,
must have felt great that after you opened up, you had the support that you needed.
totally, absolutely. And it's wonderful to feel
Right.
that the support is immense really. And also, you know, one thing I forgot to mention, having good friends around as well, family as well, that my friends were a great support network also.
All right. So, Manjit, I know you have social media, but for the listeners out there, could you tell us your social media and anything else that you would like to share with the listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, I've written my book. You can grab that on Amazon. There's some wonderful reviews on there, and it's called Survival Guide for Toxic Narcissistic Relationships. So I've had some wonderful reviews on that, and people have said they found it so helpful. And it is a packed book with quite an easy read with lots of information, and it covers what is narcissism, the narcissist brain, some research based as well, trauma bonding, why you become trapped, codependency, divorce of a narcissist, healing and dating after abuse, and there's lots more chapters in there. And I've got a large following on TikTok, which is growing. And then I've got my Instagram and YouTube. You could just type in my name, Manjit Ruprai, and it will take you there. And I am actually doing Q&As on Instagram as well. So if anybody wants to connect with me on that, they can certainly ask me a question and I will be happy to answer that.
That is amazing. I'll also add all
Yes.
that in the description of this episode.
Oh,
Um,
perfect.
yeah, so thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today.
Oh, thank you so much, Jules. I've really enjoyed talking to you today.
Same here. I had a lot of fun and I got to know you more, which is great.
Oh, absolutely. And you as well. And I look forward to being with you again soon.
I will definitely call you back in for
Thank
season two.
you. Oh, I'd love that.
All right. Well, thank you so much and you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great day too.